Hello folks, Rob Dreemeyer here. Welcome to Broadway Barfly. Today we're talking about the musical Cabaret, and we're making a cabaret cocktail.
If you're a theater fan who loves a great cocktail, click that subscribe button because Broadway Barfly is the channel for you.
Christopher Isherwood was a British-born writer who lived in Berlin in the early 1930s. This was during Hitler's rise to power, and the Nazi attacks on Jews and other minorities were becoming more frequent and severe. But Berlin had this thriving, decadent nightlife that was completely content to ignore this increasingly dangerous social climate. Isherwood wrote about his experiences in the Berlin Stories, which were collectively published in 1945. One of those stories, titled Goodbye to Berlin, was the basis for the play I Am a Camera, which opened on Broadway in 1951. The title of the play comes from the story's opening line, which establishes Isherwood as an observer as opposed to an active participant in the events. The play starred Julie Harris as Sally Bowles, an eccentric and sexually liberated young British girl who sings in a Berlin nightclub. Julie Harris won the first of her 5 Tony Awards for her portrayal of Sally Bowles. The character Sally Bowles was based on a real person named Jean Ross, who for a short time shared a flat with Isherwood. Later in her life, she went on to become a political activist and an author, but she felt that being so closely identified with the character of Sally Bowles, a very naive character and something that she was not in life, diminished the importance of her work in the opinions of many. I Am a Camera was made into the 1955 film by the same title that also starred Julie Harris alongside Lawrence Harvey and Shelley Winters. I Am a Camera was also adapted into the musical Cabaret, which opened on Broadway in 1966. The score was by John Kander and Fred Ebb, and it was directed and produced by Hal Prince. Part of the action of Cabaret takes place in the Kit Kat Club, which is a seedy Berlin nightclub presided over by a master of ceremonies. And the rest of the story takes place in and around Fraulein Schneider's boarding house. The songs performed on stage in the Kit Kat Club all comment on the action happening outside the club, usually in funny but sometimes in frightening ways. The set of the original Broadway production was dominated by a large mirror that was suspended over the stage and tilted in such a way that it reflected the audience back to itself. This was a very effective artistic choice because it allowed individual audience members to see themselves among the characters on stage while the realization of the impending atrocities started to sink in. Late in the show, the character Fraulein Schneider breaks off her engagement with her Jewish suitor, Herr Schultz, and she does so namely for her own safety and self-preservation. During the scene, she sings the song, What Would You Do? And while she sings the song to Herr Schultz, the question of the title is really being asked directly to the audience because she asks point blank, what would you do if you were me? The role of Fraulein Schneider was played by the actress Lotte Lenya, who brought a great deal of authenticity to the role. She was Austrian born, and though she was not Jewish, she did flee Nazi Germany in the early 1930s, as did her Jewish German husband, the composer Kurt Weill. Kurt Weill was a very influential composer of the time, and much of the score of Cabaret is written in his style. He wrote many important orchestral works and several Broadway musicals, which are still studied and performed today, the most famous of them being the Three Penny Opera, which of course is where the song Mac the Knife comes from. Lotte Lenya also had a distinguished career, but she's probably most recognized by audiences today from her role in the James Bond film From Russia with Love. The role of the MC was created by Joel Grey. The role of Cliff, which is basically the Isherwood role, was played by the future game show host Bert Convy. And Kander and Ebb wanted their friend Liza Minnelli to create the role of Sally Bowles, but that was an idea that Hal Prince flatly rejected. He felt that Liza Minnelli was too talented and polished to ever be believed as a second-rate singer in a seedy Berlin nightclub. So the role went to an actress named Jill Haworth. Interesting side note, when Cabaret opened in London's West End in 1968, the role of Sally Bowles was played by a young and unknown actress named Judi Dench. Who knew? When Cabaret opened on Broadway in 1966, it was not an immediate hit, namely because much of the Broadway audience found the show to be offensive, namely people who were Jewish with very personal and painful memories of this time period. But as the show's brilliance started to be appreciated, audiences came around, and the show went on to run for nearly 3 years, and it won 8 Tony Awards. The show was then adapted into the 1972 film Cabaret, which did star Liza Minnelli, so she got her chance to play Sally Bowles and really staked claim to the role. Joel Grey reprised his role of the MC, and the film was directed and choreographed by Bob Fosse. They all won Oscars for their work. The film Cabaret is really quite different from the stage show, namely because Fosse felt that the show's inherent theatricality would not translate well to the screen, and he was probably right about that. So while the film is not very faithful to the Broadway musical, it's far more faithful to the Berlin stories, because they went back to those original stories and lifted elements from them for the film's plot. In these Broadway Barfly videos, I try to refrain from giving too many personal opinions about the shows or the performances that we talk about, but I will make an exception for the film Cabaret because it's one of my favorites. And if you haven't already seen the film, or if you haven't seen it in a while, go back and give it a look because it's really magnificent, and it's the perfect film to enjoy while sipping a Cabaret cocktail. The Cabaret cocktail comes from Harry Craddock's Savoy cocktail book that was published in 1930. So that does put the cocktail in the same time period as the Berlin stories. The original recipe called for gin, bitters, absinthe, and aperitif, which is some sort of an aromatized wine from South Africa. My instinct is that this Cabaret cocktail may very well have found its way into our canon of classic cocktails had it not been for those ingredients. For many years, absinthe was difficult or even impossible to find in many places, and at some point, aperitif was completely discontinued, though my understanding is that it's now back in production. So if I ever get my hands on a bottle, rest assured, we will make a video and make that original Cabaret cocktail recipe. The version of the Cabaret we're making today is a more modern spin on that original recipe, and it's attributed to Robert Hess. Robert Hess has a cocktail channel here on YouTube. He wrote the Essential Bartender's Guide that was published in 2008. And he's also a co-founder of the Museum of the American Cocktail in New Orleans. Now, I had no idea that there was such a place, but if any of you out there have ever been to that museum, or maybe you're from New Orleans and know something about it, please tell us about it in the comments below, because I think it's a place that I and probably many of our viewers would enjoy visiting. This version of the Cabaret basically replaces the absinthe and the aperitif with more common ingredients. The absinthe is replaced by Benedictine, and the aperitif is replaced by dry vermouth. So while this is not the original concoction, it's something that I've really grown to like quite a bit, and I promise you it's an excellent drink to recreate the ambiance of some late night boozing, listening to a singer in a cabaret. To make our Cabaret, we need gin, dry vermouth, Benedictine, and bitters. Hess's recipe called specifically for Hendrick's, so that's what I'm using because I have it on hand. If you don't have Hendrick's, I would say another good alternative would be any gin that has a lighter or more floral bouquet to it. So in our glass, we are going to start with 1.5 ounces of our gin, 1 ounce of our dry vermouth, 1/2 ounce of the Benedictine, and then a couple dashes of the bitters. We'll add some ice to our glass. And we'll give this a good stir. We'll strain it into our cocktail glass. And we'll also give it maraschino cherry. And there you have a Cabaret cocktail. If you're enjoying Broadway Barfly, I hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel. It's very easy to do. All you have to do is just click that little button. And please share the videos with your friends. I hate the idea of anybody out there drinking alone. So until the next time, cheers.
If you enjoyed the video, why not give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends? Feel free to leave your comments and click that subscribe button because there's a lot more Broadway Barfly to come.